Hello, my name is Samuel Schatz. The movie I chose was Only Angels Have Wings. I chose this movie because it was one of my grandpa's favorites, and I'd never seen it before, so getting to watch it was sort of like getting to know him a little bit. It was very interesting. So, the aviation historical fact this movie is based off of is the period of time right before the Golden Age. This is where the planes had developed well enough to transport cargo, passengers, longer distances, but it was still very unsafe. There was very little technological innovation regarding the safety of pilots. The instruments they had were very limited. There weren't a lot of choices. Their weather observing, their weather reports, route planning was all very basic. All right. So, about the aviation historical fact. So yes, as I was explaining, it was very unsafe for pilots. There was a very high mortality rate amongst pilots. It was very often that they would crash land in the middle of their route, get lost, or the landing would hit a tree, run into an obstacle, land poorly, and just crash, and it would result in their death. So, yes. So about the movie was based off an airline company that had was operating in South America that was primarily tasked with a mail route that resulted in them crossing over a mountain range very close by. Never went into specific locations, but uh, they had one weather observatory in the mountains that one of their staff members was tasked with staying at to report the weather along the route. And then, based off that report, as well as a report they got from North America along what was going on with the weather of the ocean, they would have to plan and predict the weather to make sure their pilots were safe. And in the movie, there were many instances where the pilots would return halfway. They would start flying, and the weather would deteriorate much faster than they were expecting, and they would have to turn around and come back. Also, in the beginning of the movie, there was a pilot that was one of the five major flaws of pilots. He got very impulsive, thought he could do something he couldn't, tried to land in heavy fog, resulted in him running into a tree and crash landing at the very beginning. That's sort of how the two main characters sort of interact and meet each other for the first time. Yes. Okay. So the way the movie represents the time, the aviation as it was, is perfectly related to how it was reported for history class. It was very unsafe. The pilots were almost like soldiers or like old school cowboys. They were very. It was a very dangerous job, and they knew it. But they loved it, and they flew because they loved it, which is heroic. Yes. So the way the director of the movie chose to portray aviation was very like romantic. It was like he was telling a story. He wanted everyone to be involved, and they wanted to really focus on the movie. And I think he did a very good job of that. Yeah. So the way he portrayed it was the pilots had a love of flying that they couldn't explain. It was just like they couldn't do anything else. All they could do was fly. They'd rather go down with their plane than jump. And it builds up a desire to sort of like a courageous job. It's a very cool job. So how would I portray the facts differently? The movie was filmed in 1939, so it was a very old movie. So the special effects of the movie were a little bit lackluster, which was understandable. But I would have liked to see a little bit more special effects with the flying and the different weather scenarios they were put in. I also would have portrayed it more as portrayed the pilots as very uncaring as to whether or not their fellow pilots made it back or not. That it was all just a pursuit of flying, and what resulted in the middle didn't quite matter as much. I would have portrayed that a little differently, but I don't know if that's true or not because I didn't live through those times. So yes, okay. So would I see this movie in theater? Yeah, I probably would see this movie in theater. It was a little more drama based than I was expecting, but it was still a very good movie, and it was a very interesting insight into what aviation was like towards its beginning commercially. So it's a very interesting movie. I would highly recommend a watch. This is the end of my video report.